Chris Renkel alongside Richard Skinner on another day of Bengals Training Camp. Skinny in early practice because Luke Combs has taken over everything you see around here, so I'm not complaining. It was early practice. It was a much cooler practice. It seemed much more laid back, but a good day for the offense today.
Yeah, it really was. Joe Burrow has had his ups and downs, and that's probably to be expected. But today it was a late 11-on-11 session, and we were all starting to zone out, and had one of the other beat writers say to me, I need something to happen. It doesn't match, something to happen. And on back-to-back plays, Joe Burrow throws a dime to Charlie Jones against pretty good coverage from Josh Newton. He probably was going to be called for interference if it wasn't a catch. And then on the very next play, he rolls out to his right in kind of a scramble situation, points for Cedric Jackson to go deep, and he throws just a perfect pass, catches him in stride. In fact, Cedric told us he actually had to turn on the speed a little bit to catch up to that pass. Back-to-back passes, that was impressive from Joe Burrow.
This is Joe Burrow that we've questioned sometimes the risk because he just hasn't been consistent. He'll throw great passes. He won't go deep often. He'll throw some wobblers. But today I thought was maybe his best day out there, especially in the team period.
Agreed. And it wasn't just those two throws. And it looked like he tried to press the ball down the field a little bit more. And maybe this was a day where the defense was in more man and they wanted to test some of those things. That's sometimes the things you don't know. Joe mentioned it yesterday, and I didn't even think about it till he said it. Some days it's just a day to take check downs, and some days it's a day to force a ball in here, and some days it's a day, and I do believe that. And maybe today was a day where they're saying, like, hey, we see man coverage, let's just try to see how this thing works on the deep ball, and Joe looked really good when he threw it.
And you mentioned that. I thought today was a day for the scramble drill because it seemed like more and more he was doing a lot of the scrambling around, and he looked pretty good throwing on the run, so I think that's a good sign that wrist, even if it's not 100%, good enough to be effective when it comes to game play. Now, while the offense had a good day, the defense, especially on that back end, that young secondary, really mightily struggled. Not a good day to be Josh Newton or Dax Hill.
Yeah, and, I know there's going to be some hand-wringing about Dax, and it's understandable, right? I mean, he's never played outside corner in this league, and he's making another position switch. I'm still going to give this some time. If push comes to shove, DJ Turner starts over him, and Cam, they'll find a role for Dax. The other corner spot's fine with Cam Taylor-Britt, and obviously Mike Hilton in the slot. And it looked like today was a day to roll some of those younger guys in with the ones. You mentioned Josh Newton played some with the ones. Actually played some in the slot with the ones. We saw a three-safety look where Dejon Anthony was in there with the ones in a kind of a big dime look. So I think today was a day probably for Lou Anarumo to let me see what some of the young guys do with some of the older guys. And in certain one-on-one situations, to your point, it wasn't good.
Josh Newton hasn't looked good, but Dejon Anthony's had a pretty good camp, too. I think they're going to be good on the depth, and you can never have enough defensive backs in this league.
No, and I mean, at the very least, and I think that's where you're going to look for Darren Simmons when he figures out this whole kickoff thing, and that's still probably a work in progress of what type of player do you need? Would you keep a fifth safety? Would you keep a fifth defensive end / defensive tackle? I think that's where you go with all of those things. Those are the back-end roster guys. That's Dejon Anthony. Probably right now slots as the fifth safety behind Tyson Anderson, and Jordan Battle is the two backups at the moment. Do you keep that fifth safety? They don't often do that, but hey, if this guy's such a good athlete and it's going to help you on special teams, you're going to keep him.
All right, another week in the books. They'll be back at it on Sunday, and we have an opponent coming up, the first preseason game just over a week away when Tampa Bay comes to Paycor Stadium.